Welcome, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where we look to crack the code on growing your business by tackling the challenges that keep revenue leaders up at night. I'm Carl Ortmans, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into the topic of communication. More specifically, though, revenue modeling communication. Now, before we get kickstarted, I'm honored to say that today's podcast is sponsored by the Red Umbrella Group. The Red Umbrella Group specializes in training sales reps to consistently align value with their buyers, utilizing consultative and integrity-based methods so sales reps are equipped to engage in high-quality sales conversations that are advantageous outcomes for both sides. Learn more about them at theredumbrellagroup.com and mention the show for a special rate. So now I got to tell you, I'm excited about this one. It's been a little bit while, but with me to talk about this topic today is the one and only Kyle Lacy. So context, Kyle and I worked together. Okay, let me just say it better.
A long
I
time ago.
learned more about marketing from him during the time that we crossed over at Salesforce with the Exact Target and Pardot acquisitions. And he's one of the voices in marketing that I pay super close attention to. If you don't know, Kyle's a 3-time published author. He's a marketing leader at companies like Salesforce and OpenView Ventures before turning into the executive marketing leadership ranks. He was a CMO at Lacy, then the SVP of marketing at Seismic post-acquisition, the CMO at Jellyfish, and is currently the CMO of Docebo, on top of being a board member for several companies. He's also the Indianapolis chapter head for Pavilion and the person who referred me into Pavilion. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Finally, his most important title, though, is being a 2-time dad. And so before we jump into the conversation, here's why today matters. Imagine implementing just one strategy from today's conversation and watching your revenue metrics shift within weeks, not months. That's exactly what the goal of the podcast is. Let's talk about the revenue challenge that others have faced and how they solved it. As I like to say, success leaves clues, and we're going to highlight those clues for you today. So let's solve some problems, revenue problems. Kyle, thank you and welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. And I'll have to say, you have perfected the podcast voice,
Have
Carl.
I?
Yes, you
Oh,
have. It sounds
I,
great.
well, maybe it's just the mic. Maybe I have to give a shout out to
You're like the cadence and the way you're delivering the words. It's great. It's
really.
beautiful.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
you're the first person to say this, so thank you. I'm
You're
learning.
welcome.
I'm flying by the seat of my pants, and I'm learning quickly. So thank you for that.
We
So
all are. It's life.
that's right. So Kyle, can maybe give the world a little bit of context around you. So what industries or verticals do you work in today? What are your selling motions? What size of companies do you work with?
Yeah, so Docebo, learning management software, so platform that helps everything from internal employees to external partners learn and train.
Hmm.
And we sell to every segment. We mainly focus on mid-market and enterprise, sales-led motion. Docebo as a whole is about 1,000 employees.
Oh, awesome. And it's a platform that I'm actually becoming pretty familiar with the work with Pavilion. So great platform. So if anybody that's looking into it, take a look.
Yeah, please
So
do.
yes, but all right, let's set this up. How we got to the topic today, I asked Kyle a question. I said, hey, so what's a successful revenue initiative you've led or an existing challenge you're solving or are solving? And you responded really quickly, and it's one that I'm super excited about. And the topic, because the topic I'm passionate about. And you said to me, why modeling across the entire revenue org is the most important communication. So let's just start there. How come you pick this one?
I mean, what's measured is managed, right? I,
Yeah.
I, I would really love to know who said that because somebody had to have said that first, but everybody says it now. I'm sure that GPT or Google can help us with that. But I've come to find that it's really, really difficult for marketing and a lot of other teams to really drive towards success if they're not modeling pipeline and revenue, or if they're not goaling on it.
Mm,
Because it's, you got the from a sales side, you've got quota attainment, you've got bookings, right? If you
mhm,
don't drive revenue as a business, you're not a business, right?
right.
But marketing's gone through a really interesting phase of influence and attribution modeling and all this stuff. But the reality is that a lot of businesses don't model how much pipeline they need, right, in
Mhm.
order to drive bookings, which blows my mind. It's like a top-down, bottoms-up model. And what I have found is that the model actually drives alignment the best way possible across all the different go-to-market teams. Finance is running it, RevOps is involved, sales has a self-sourced number, marketing has a number, BDRs have a number. And even if the model is wrong or directionally accurate, it still drives people towards movement, proactivity. If you don't have a pipeline model, what number are you working against? Is it an MQL number? Is it by units? And you have no idea about dollars, right? So for me, it's a great way for marketing to have a seat at the table by helping steward that number with finance and sales.
So the question I have on this one, and there's a few of them, and so I'll start with this one if it's okay.
Yeah.
When you think about the pipeline model and the number, there's a difference between bookings and revenue, right? Bookings, I booked it, revenue, we received the money. How do you look at that, or how do you like to look at that with your peers? Is it, I'm going to start with pipeline until it's booked? Where does the customer success or account management, whatever you want to call it, where does that retention side come into play when you have these conversations?
I mean, if it's done appropriately, it should be modeled all together. Like if you have a great new bookings quarter, but your churn's terrible, doesn't matter. Yeah, you have a leaky bucket, right? And so I think a problem a lot of people run into is they're like, let's create a pipeline model. It goes to a bookings and we don't take into account expansion, like selling more to your customers, and also churn.
Right.
And that should factor in together. So if we're talking about like this, I'm getting really tactical, but this is like a meeting that you have weekly that should include customer success. It shouldn't just be sales and marketing.
Right.
Because your customer success team, if you have multiple products, multiple SKUs, should also have a pipeline number, or your account management team, right? This isn't like I think a lot of times the CS team or post sales, it's a magic number that they fall into and magically create expansion. But great companies are modeling expansion pipeline like they are new business.
I completely agree with you. And I think that's the one where, in my opinion, you should start. If you're a new leader, that's the first thing I think you should start with. Like look at the churn model, see where the accounts, because it's harder now than it's ever been, and this is my own opinion, to book a meeting with a net new customer.
Yeah, but I think it's harder. I'll push back a little bit. I think it's harder to model churn and expansion pipeline because a lot of early stage businesses don't have any data on it at all. I will say that if you're not doing anything and you're like hoping that the bookings number that the CEO put in place, you could get even close to hitting it, look at your past 6 months, factor in your win rate, both by unit and by dollar, and model it out from stage one when you created the opportunity to close one, and model it out for 6 months with top down, bottom up model. Like how much bookings do we need? And then look at the pipeline number and figure out whether that's really realistic or not. Because a lot of times what happens is that we're sitting there as practitioners, we're like, yeah, we're ready to go. And then the CEO is like, hey, the board and I set a bookings goal. And you look at it and you're like, what the hell are we even talking about? I'm lucky that it's very rare that I've experienced that, right? Like I've been very lucky that I've worked for and am working for a leadership that, especially as CEOs, that understand that unrealistic numbers is not worth it, right? But a lot of times people like just throw darts at a wall and have no idea where the target is. And that just seems crazy to me. So pushing back on you a little bit, I think that the new business modeling is a little bit easier. And the most important thing, if you're listening, is just to get a model in place and start looking at it weekly.
Yeah.
Like if you want like check the box, I feel like I won today, just go do that. And you're going to have account executives that are going to be like, well, I've never self-sourced pipeline, blah, 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 because you never looked at it. Right. It's never been a number, right? Well, guess what? You're a sales rep.
Yeah.
We source pipeline, right? So, and inbound, you need to get 50% of the pipeline needs to come to the website, blah, blah, blah. Right. Like you can model it any way you want.
I agree with you. And sorry, I didn't set that up well. What I mean is going into a company, like look at what's happening on your accounts. If you're trying to grow, if you're looking to see where to effectively put your attention, that's a really good place to start because you can start to see what's what does the what does the initial contract look like? What does the growth look like? How
Yeah.
long does that take? I think you have there are some clues there, but from the new business modeling side, I totally agree. It's easier because you don't really know if the person's going to upsell or they're going to downgrade or they're going to churn or they're not or
Yeah.
whatever it is. There's a lot more of that. But the question is rooted there of start to finish. I got the
Well, it's
lead.
well, I'm going to stop you for a second. Well, one important point, and then we'll get to the lead thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with prioritization. If you are a startup and you're trying to grow,
Hmm.
you are going to be at a disservice for sales and marketing if you are focused on churn.
Right. Agreed.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't look at it, but it means that a lot of your time and energy needs to be spent creating business. And if that's cross-selling, great. But I feel like, I mean, I see this quite a bit. Marketing leaders at early stage companies, they spread themselves so thin that they don't ever get anything done really.
Right.
And so I just want to preface
No.
that by saying like you need to focus on creating revenue. You don't
No.
want to lose the revenue, but you should have people in place that should help support that. And it
Yeah.
shouldn't just be on you, right?
Yeah, and there are going to be differences. If you're a brand new company, you have to start to acquire customers. The further on along you get, you're going to
Yeah.
look at your
Yeah.
model a little
Like
bit
at
different, right?
Docebo, we look at all of it.
Right.
Like it's very like the whole funnel is important to us for sure.
So going back to like the root of the conversation that we started with of like the revenue modeling,
Hmm.
I'll Stephanie Valenti, I went through CRO school at Pavilion
Hmm.
3 different times. I will say though, the very first one, I believe you also were part of
We
that.
probably talked about this.
We definitely talked about this, and it was part of it. But I remember Stephanie bringing up, what does your modeling look like? What's your forecasting model? As an example, I'm like, what do you mean forecasting model? You got best case, you got pipeline, you got commit. She's like, haha, that's not it. Is it bottoms up? Is it top down? Is it growth plus? Which one are you using? And it stopped me in my tracks. And so, can we start there? If it's the most important communication,
Yeah.
how do you even bring that conversation across the board? How does it start? What does it look like? Like, what's your opinion on saying, hey, here's how we started, here's the types of things that we're doing, and here's what that meeting looks like so that we can build a plan and we're coming
Yeah.
back to it or we're not.
Well, it starts with finance. And a lot of times,
Mm.
finance is doing they're doing more like a headcount capacity modeling if you're sales led with the sales leader, and they're not including marketing or anybody else in that conversation. So they're modeling the bookings number based off of headcount. I think you need to do both. I think you need to have a top down, bottoms up model
Mhm.
that takes into account conversion rates in the funnel, but also the headcount capacity that you have and your ability to reach 80, 90, 100% quota attainment.
Right.
The problem is that finance, they need to be involved because you want buy-in from the CFO
Mhm.
or the VP of finance. You also want buy-in from marketing because marketing has to support and drive a lot of that pipeline if they're doing it appropriately. Like marketing's, I think Udi said this from Gong, but our point is to make sales easier. Like that's marketing's job, right? And so a lot of times you have this conversation about a headcount capacity model, and then it's taken to the board and they're like, great. And then you set a bookings number, and then that's the model. And everybody's just sitting there like, okay, well, I don't know what else we need to do. So you
Mhm.
need both. I don't know how, I don't know how you model appropriately by only picking one, frankly.
Mhm.
But you have to include go to market leadership in these conversations because it also applies to budgeting. Like if I have a pipeline number and I know the BDRs have a pipeline number and AEs have a pipeline number, and my budget line is the same as sales from the board's perspective, there's a sales and marketing line, right? We don't,
Mhm.
you do get deep and tactical because you should as a leader, but you really don't unpack that S&M line at the top,
Right.
right? So I want to be able to say, I have a model, sales has a model, we're talking about pipeline creation. Let's talk about budgeting and where we should spend money.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times the budget conversation is even separate. Finance will go to marketing. What do you need? Finance will go to sales. What do you need? And then there's not like, for some reason, there isn't a joint discussion about, hey, maybe we shouldn't invest in paid and we should hire a BDR. Maybe
Mhm.
we shouldn't hire that AE tomorrow. Maybe we need to do some partner webinar that we pay for or whatever lead gen, maybe it's a brand play. It doesn't
Right.
matter to me. But that's like, if you don't have that initial model in place, you can't have these conversations in a meaningful way. And all it is emotional gut instinct. It's like, why is marketing's budget flat? Marketing does all this stuff and there's no numbers. It's just us saying, well, we need to be recognized. We need more money. And you have to have that model in place in order to have a decent conversation about it.
Yeah, and I think what you just highlighted is exactly the problem statement that exists. I went and I talked to sales. Sales said this. I went and talked to marketing. Marketing said this. I went and I talked to finance. I went and talked. So now all of a sudden you build a model. Is there input? Sure. But what I think you said that is missed is it needs to be collaborative. This needs to be something where you have the leadership in the room,
Mhm.
you bring it up, you come back and say, hey, look, based on the numbers, here's how we get there. It's
Yeah,
not marketing do it, it's
absolutely.
not sales, it's how do we get there?
Absolutely.
And so one of the things you said earlier on is like pipeline coverage and all these different things. So I'll give you an example, and I think it's the simplest form, but maybe it's just the way I think. And so I had this issue and said, let me see how the budget's made. And so, well, here's what we did. The board said this is the number. So here's what it is. And I looked at it and said, okay, what's the attainment, the quota attainment? Well, the quota attainment is in the 70th percentile. Okay, how did we build it? At 100 percentile. So we have no wiggle room. So now all of a sudden you're like,
Zero.
oh, you have none. Well, we're going to add more AEs. Okay, what is the time to ramp? Well, what do you
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. Exactly.
What is the time to
Exactly.
build? And
Yeah.
so so maybe from your perspective, how does that conversation sound? Like the rooms that you've been in, do you bring everybody together? Do you have this level of what are the inputs that you look for to have this conversation with the team so that you get this one, I'll say master document for lack of a better term, and then
Mhm.
it's your communication tool?
I think you kind of said it. I mean, you have headcount capacity model, which hopefully includes onboarding time and has a quota attainment model, right?
Mhm,
And then you've got conversion rate metrics for the funnel
mhm,
that they're historic, so they help you forecast forward. A lot of times what finance does is that they average it out and that's how they set the number. However, you probably should think a little bit proactively about upping those conversion rate goals because you're going to do a good job at fixing conversion. A
mhm.
lot of times we don't like to model in optimism, but I think that it's important to do because you need to believe in your team. And then you've got the normal ones like ACV, like dollar by segment and unit, and that's really it. Honestly, you get everybody in the room, you say, hey, this is what we need to hit this year. How are we going to do it? Here's all the inputs. Let's talk about it. A lot of times people just have one-off conversations and then set a number and then you have OKRs to try to figure it out.
Mhm.
And it needs to be a joint conversation. It's a hell of a lot easier and to uh, argue and challenge each other and actually win together if you're looking at numbers everybody agreed on.
Mhm.
And
I
I think
agree.
that's the most important part.
The agreed upon. We all
Yes.
agreed that that's the number, and here's how we get there.
Yep.
I'm totally with you. And even more some of the things that I've done, and maybe you've done this as well, is I looked at it and said, okay, what does the coverage model need to look like? Because one of the things you mentioned earlier is like, is a 50% generated, and is it inbound is the other 50? Does it come from a
Yep.
channel? Where does
Yep.
it come from? And so what I've done with some others is just said, okay, I'm going to break this down. North America, let's just for sake of we'll pick a couple to be simple. North America, EMEA is one where people are like, oh, I cover EMEA. I'm like, well, what is EMEA? Anyways, it's a totally different thing.
Every single country is a different market.
Exactly. You're like, but hold on. So let's just say there's North America, UK, Ireland, And then,
Mhm.
you have Australia and New Zealand as an example. You have 3 different ones. And
Yep.
so what I've looked at it in the past and said, okay, here's the reps. I went in to look at each one reps conversion, etc. So I went by rep, by region, and said, okay, based on the numbers, here's the aggregated number that we're going to need to drive as a revenue team, marketing, sales, etc. Here's what this looks like, and etc. So if we want to have 100% capacity, for sake of discussion, we need $1 million every month. And that $1 million, though, is the baseline required 1-to-1. In order to have wiggle room, we need a multiplier. Do you
Mhm.
look at it? Is that
Yeah.
similar how you look at it? Is like,
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
like,
and it's all dependent on historic conversion rate.
hmm,
Like it, but look, if you're starting out listening to that, like I'm very lucky that I've always worked with really smart RevOps teams. I've been very lucky. If you're starting from scratch, pick 3x or 5x and just go for it.
yeah.
Like a lot of this stuff is directional. I think I said that before.
Hmm.
And what I've found happens is that people look at it and think about the modeling and have a conversation. And the one thing that comes up, the one thing that comes up quite a bit is we don't have enough data. This is not going to be accurate. That is not a reason not to set a model to help the team try to hit a goal.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that you like guess and then like tie uh, bonuses to a pipeline model that's a guess because you don't have enough historic data. It does mean that you create one to start monitoring it.
Right.
Just because you don't have historic data does not mean you should not do this. And that's the number one reason I found people don't have modeling is because they don't think they have enough data, which is crazy,
It's kind
honestly.
of like, don't
But
let
from a coverage perspective, 3 or 5x is a good, like, throw a dart at the board.
good leading indicator. Look, I got that. It's sort of the don't let perfect get in the way of good, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's just make sure we have a plan. Great. So now we've looked at it, and so if somebody's listening, I now look at my team. I look at the coverage model that's required. I have the head count. I think it from the head count perspective. Now that you all come together, you generate that number and you say whatever the number is. How do you then roll that out? Who do you talk with? Who gets involved? Or sorry,
Mhm.
who gets that information? And how often do people get updated?
So we roll it out. You roll it out to the leadership team to get their buy-in, and then you roll it out company-wide. And for me, it is a weekly meeting with a very small set of people that control that number: sales leader, marketing leader, rev ops,
Mhm.
or the CFO, whoever, or the finance leader, whoever. You are meeting weekly, reviewing the numbers and making sure you're pacing appropriately. You can update the team monthly, and then you revise the model quarterly. So we have like a, I guess you could call it like a SWAT team.
Mhm.
Then you have a larger meeting that includes managers. That's a growth council that only meets once a month. I've also done, I haven't done it as much recently, but I did it quite a bit at Leslie and then at Jellyfish. Was we had a weather report that I would send out every week that was basically a weather report on how we did last week on pipeline. So it'd either be sunny, rainy, or overcast, and that was the weather report, and it had pipeline metrics, it had the win from last week, it had a closed loss call, and then it had like updates from each team, so BDRs, inbound, whoever. um, Weekly might be too much, you might want to do bi-weekly, but the most important thing after you set the model is to have regular connects on the pacing.
Mhm.
And you could just do it on a core number. You don't have to be like, inbound, what did you do? Sales, what did you do? You could just say, we needed to create $1 million last month. We are at 300K and we're at 20% of the month right now. How are we doing?
Right. I think that's the really important thing, because it's a team sport. Revenue is a team sport. It's not
Yeah,
individual.
absolutely.
You need everybody together. And so going into it, how are we pacing? Well, look, are our leading indicators working? I like to look at leading indicators as an input to me. And maybe you don't look at it this way, but I think you've also said about the weather report. If I'm not mistaken, you've made a couple of comments or posted something like, here, I'll send you my weather report example.
Yeah.
something like this. So I remember I'll look to add this into the notes if I can find it for everybody. But there's an input and there's a leading and there's a pacing. So are our leading indicators correct? Yes or no? Hey, we said we were going to generate 15 meetings this week. We're off. How come? Is that the question that you lead with when you're in that meeting? Is it a, hey, how come? Is that the emphasis, or how do you have that conversation in the room so it doesn't become a finger pointing, but it's a collaboration tool?
Yeah, I don't know if you'll ever really get away from finger pointing. I think finger pointing actually can be healthy if the conversation is managed appropriately. And that's why setting these numbers ahead of time and everybody agreeing upon them or agreeing to disagree is so important, because arbitration is easier. So if you have a sales leader that's like, well, AEs don't need to self-source. We're like, well, actually, when we built the model, you said you're okay with 20%. So why has that changed? That's not an argument. That's not finger pointing. That's just stating the fact.
Mhm.
Or, hey, marketing, you said you could produce this amount of dollars from paid and you're only doing this. Why? They like, oh, well, we did agree upon that. You're right. Here's why. So for me, in a perfect world, the how come would be surfaced before the meeting. So if you have a good RevOps person, and even if you don't, if you have somebody that's managing the data, they are sending something ahead of time saying, here's what happened last week. Here are a couple things to note that we need to discuss in the meeting. You get in the meeting, you don't talk about the numbers. You should, if you have reporting set up and there's a dashboard, I don't care if it's a damn Google sheet, does not matter to me. You shouldn't have to go to a meeting to understand where the numbers are at. The numbers are in a report that are updated daily. You go to a meeting to make sure that you are surfacing the challenges in the pipeline model so that you can fix them. So, hey, AE3 in New York had a weird discovery call, and we're finding that his or her conversion rates dropping after stage 2. That's a challenge point. Or, hey, EMEA, for some reason, inbound dollar dropped by 20% last week. Discussion point.
Mhm.
And then the people can come to the table with actual data, not a, hey, let's surface these in meetings, which is crazy. You should never have to surface a challenge in a meeting. You should know about it beforehand, and the meeting should be used to try to fix it.
Yeah, it's content versus
That's
context.
easy to say.
It's super easy to say, but it's hard to do, right? Simple is very hard. And
Yeah.
so it is so when you get into that meeting and you've talked about the different leaders, who runs that meeting for you? Is it
RevOps
sales? It's RevOps. So RevOps has the most
or
important seat at the table,
finance.
or finance.
I don't think it should be run by anyone responsible for the pipeline numbers,
How come?
because it's too they shouldn't have to. It's too one-sided.
No, because you're
The finance leader or RevOps or whoever you have running data should be the balance between all the functions that have to produce pipeline.
the RevOps team doesn't have an emotional attachment to it,
They
whereas
shouldn't.
sales and or marketing both have emotional attachment to numbers, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, correct.
got it. So now you have that meeting. You have the context. Hey,
Mhm.
this was a problem. Hey, here's a problem statement. By the way, EMEA, just want to give everybody a heads up. The number for, just because we said EMEA, the number for EMEA in August, just so everybody's going to be prepared, is going to slide. I'm going to tell you that now ahead of time, because guess
Yep.
what? EMEA shuts down in August.
Okay, so you are surfacing one of the most important points here. The number one reason that executives or leaders get fired is because the people they report to were surprised.
Hmm.
If you are doing your diligence and you understand the numbers and you're tracking them and you understand pacing, the most important thing you can do as a leader is to surface the challenges before they actually become a challenge. Hey, we noticed a drop in stage 2 conversion. Just wanted to let everybody know. Here's what we're doing to work on it. Here's the goal. This is not the CEO randomly came across something, a gong call where they had terrible discovery and then they pulled up their own report and found that conversion rate was dropping and they just discovered it and they sent a bunch of emails. That's the wrong way to do this. The whole point of alignment is to not surprise your boss or the board with things that are going wrong, because guess what? They go wrong all the time. But in my mind, I just don't want people surprised. If you are managing your business appropriately, there should never be that. That should never happen.
Going into those meetings with, I had actually had this coach to me earlier in my career, because I started reporting to a president, started reporting to a CEO, started reporting to the board. And what the feedback to me, you kind of said it was, what? So what? Now what? What is the problem? I can tell you what it
Great.
is.
Perfect.
So what does it mean? Now what do we do about it?
Yep.
And that changed. So if you're listening to this and you're going into those meetings, because it's consistent, do not surprise me. Do not show me a surprise. Don't let me walk into a meeting and being completely blindsided by, hey, we're not going to hit the number. We're going to be 30% of the number. And you tell me the last week of the month.
Yeah. And another very important point. Do not make sure that you spend time fully trying to understand where the challenge is. So if you have a CEO that's like freaking out over stage 2 conversion, it's really not the stage 2 conversion that's the issue. It's the fact that you didn't hit bookings last quarter. Right? So, you can argue all day long about what we're doing for stage 2. It does not matter, because you didn't deliver on bookings. So if you're hitting bookings every quarter, guess what? You're probably not getting the CEO asking you about blah, 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 right? So, or the board or whoever you report to, the VP of marketing, it does not matter. But that's the whole point of not being surprised. It's like, hey, making sure that everybody understands what's happening on a weekly basis so that you are moving forward. You're not just reporting on things.
Yeah. I think that's the most important comment right there. We're not just reporting on it. We're providing insight to the business. This is what we saw. This is what we learned. We placed a bet this quarter on manufacturing as a vertical, just as an example. By the way, manufacturing is not responding. It's not going nearly as well as we want. We need to make a pivot. I'll say pivot, or we need to make an adjustment. So I know we've sort of crossed the 30-minute mark, and we'll try to not to keep you too long. Maybe the question I probably should ask you is, this topic was one you jumped on pretty quickly, and it was clear. Is there something for you that happened in your career of like, this is a problem, I see it, it's a problem you've experienced, or you're experiencing across multiple companies?
No, I mean, it happened, if I remember correctly, it happened at Lessonly. So Lessonly, when I joined Series A, it was not even, I don't even think we were 5 million in revenue. And we didn't have any type of pipeline modeling, at least from what I can remember. And, memory is emotional. So this is our Brian Montminy, who is one of the best CFOs I've ever worked with. He would probably listen to this and be like, well, we actually had one. But from my understanding, like, we spent a ton of time and energy trying to figure out a pipeline model that helped like drive the company forward. And that's the first step for me. And then it just continued across the board. Where the pain comes is the finger pointing. If you miss bookings and you don't have any type of model, you have no idea where it went wrong. No clue. You don't even have like a whiff of what went wrong, right? And so, for me, I've just been in situations where a bookings number is set, whether it's a company I advise or one that I'm in, and hey, it's like, we need to grow 75% next year, and there is no conversation about how you're going to get there. And that is the biggest issue, because if you're a CEO listening to this, it is your responsibility to set that up. It is your responsibility to bring the people to the table to say, we need a pipeline model. We need a demand model to understand how we're going to hit the bookings number that I believe we should hit in order to do X, Y, or Z, raise more money, or buy a company, or maintain profitability, whatever the business goal is. And then you allow your leadership team to own it. For me, marketing owning the pipeline number helped me get a seat at the table and helped me justify some budget. And that's where I started. And that's kind of just evolved since then.
And now you make sure that you have a tight connection with all of your peers. And so that's tight, which is great.
Well, yeah. And look, always be better. It can always be better, but at least you have the system in place in order to have checks and balances for the front of the funnel
Yeah.
so that there are no surprises.
The thing that I would take away or have people think about if they're listening, have a system. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's Google Sheets, if it's your CRM, if it's a a business note, it doesn't matter. Just write it down and put something together and say, all right, we're going to talk about it. Are we right or wrong? And if we're wrong, we as a team, not finger point of like sales, you didn't deliver, marketing, you didn't deliver, you're not delivering. Hey, what can we do? We can put resources towards things so that we are understanding how to move the business forward.
Correct.
Great. So we got to get wrapped up here. We're pretty close. So everybody likes new, nobody likes different, and doing both at the same time can either cause friction or uncertainty. Something I like to ask everybody, or I like to say, but I'll ask you this: for somebody listening to this, and this is exactly a problem they're facing, what are the 2 or 3 operational things or insights you can say, hey, look, on Monday, go and do these 2 or 3 things. It'll help you. What would you tell people to do?
You and I talked about inputs. Get a list of inputs, go to the finance leader or your RevOps people or the Salesforce admin, whoever you have that's running data, and ask them to help you build a report with that data. That's what you should do. And then review that data and try to figure out how to model that data forward. Use the finance team to help you do that. I do think it's important to explain why you want it, but ultimately it's just to make sure you have access to it. And then that will create a ton of different conversations. That's important. But if you're going to go do something tomorrow, get the data set that you need in order to start looking at how to model something forward.
And it also sounds like you are saying what it sounds like you'd say is have a point of view. This is what I can see.
Yeah.
Challenges.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's important to have a point of view because you're not just going to go to the finance leader and say, I need a pipeline model. Could you go do it? Like you need to be, some people do that. And then they're not bought in because they didn't work on it with them. Like you have to be collaborative in this stuff. It can't just be like I filled out the RevOps form and they're going to deliver it to me in a week. Great. You need to be in the mix. You can't GPT prompt this thing. You got to build it together.
Yeah. Build it together.
I mean, you can GPT prompt it if you want, but make sure you check with security before you do it or your CIO.
But do you have alignment? There we go. Right back to the communicating.
You got to have alignment with your CIO before you go start using GPT with a bunch of customer information. Do not do that. Do not do that.
Yeah. For the record, Kyle is saying do not put all of your financial insights into ChatGPT. Don't
ever do that.
Yeah. Great. So Kyle, if somebody says, hey, I want to learn a little bit more, I want to maybe pick up the conversation, where would people find you?
Most of my time spent on LinkedIn when I've got it. Wow. Good. Wow. That was good. That was immediate. Did we plan that? I don't know if we planned that. Did we plan that?
I try to be prepared. If there's something I like to do is be prepared.
You're definitely prepared. I will. Yeah. LinkedIn's where I spend my most time. And then I have a podcast and newsletter called The Revenue Diaries. You can find it at therevenuediaries.com.
Therevenuediaries.com. That's awesome. Hey, Kyle, thank you very much. And that wraps up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast. Kyle, thank you for sharing all these invaluable insights today. These are strategies you can put into action. If you found value in today's conversation, please like the episode, subscribe to the podcast wherever you see, so you never miss an episode. If you do have feedback though, and or a topic that you want to talk about, or even if you want to be a guest, love to hear from you. Let me know. Thank you for investing your time today. Remember, success leaves clues, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Carl with Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn obstacles into opportunities. Thanks for being with us today.